Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to be teaching you how to make homemade oven fried chicken nuggets that you can also make in an air fryer, as well as a recipe for a homemade honey mustard that ends up tasting amazing. So as you can see, these look a lot like chicken nuggets from a particular fast food place, and they end up tasting just like it. If you want to make them taste a little bit more like those, if you marinate your chicken ahead of time in some pickle juice, that'll do it. So to start out with, you're going to set your breading station up, and it's important to set this up ahead of time before you start cutting your chicken so that it's ready to go when you get ready to start cutting things up. So in the first bowl, you're going to have flour, and this setup for breading things is what you're going to use for pretty much anything that you're deep frying as well or oven frying. In your second bowl, you're going to have eggs, and usually you add a little bit of water in there as well, or milk, just to thin it out because the eggs are a little bit thick on their own. And then in your third bowl, you're going to have breadcrumbs, or if you don't want to use breadcrumbs or don't have breadcrumbs, you can also use another round of flour and just go back into bowl one. But also, if you don't have breadcrumbs, you can make your own. And in a lot of cases, you can use that old bread that's been sitting around for a little while, as long as it doesn't have some green spots or weirdness on it. So what you're going to do is you're going to slowly toast this bread to get it as dry as possible. So you're going to toast it for an hour and a half. And I know that seems like a long time, but you're going to toast it for an hour and a half at 200 and turn it every 30 minutes. And that's going to get it very, very dry and toasted out. And then what you're going to do, if you have a food processor, this is going to help out a lot, but you're going to paste about 6 slices into the bowl of the food processor and pulse it until the crumbs are about the right size. And if you do not have a food processor, no big deal at all. You can just place those in a Ziploc bag and crush it with a rolling pin or a mallet. Just be careful if you're using like a meat mallet or something, that is going to puncture the Ziploc bag, so just be careful with that. You can also just use your hands to crush them as well. They do crumble a lot easier when they're like this. So then you're going to start setting your breading station up. And so you're going to crack your eggs into your middle bowl. And keep in mind that as you are working with this, you may end up needing to do a little bit of a refill as you go, and that is just fine. But once you crack your eggs, you're going to whisk them up, and you are going to whisk this before you add anything else, just to make sure that those are completely combined. You can also use a fork for this if you don't have a whisk. And then we are going to add just a little bit of water, about a tablespoon of water per egg, but this is not exact. I just kind of pour a little bit in there until it looks good. And then you are going to whisk that up a little bit more, just so that everything looks all the same and that you don't see any crazy differences in the eggs. Then what you are going to do is season your flour, and you are going to put a lot of seasoning in here. It is a lot more than you think you need. The flour is going to take up a lot of that seasoning, and this is where most of the seasoning for this goes into. There's a lot of things you can add in there. You can do Greek seasoning or Italian seasoning, especially if you're going to be using these as a part of another dish, like if you were making chicken parmesan or something like that. You can use seasoning salt, you can use garlic and onion powder, and always salt and pepper. You can use one of these, all of these, whatever combination works for you, but you just want to make sure that you're seasoning this extremely well and that you can see a good amount of the seasoning once you mix that up. You also are going to want to, because we are oven frying these, we can do this, but you're going to also want to add some seasoning to your eggs and your breadcrumbs as well. But if you are deep frying, you don't want to season your breadcrumbs because these seasonings are going to contaminate your fryer oil, especially if you're going to want to use that fryer oil more than once. So make sure that you are not using seasoning in the breadcrumbs in that case, and then stir all those up. Set your breading aside after that point, and then we are going to start prepping your chicken. And you're going to cut these cut in the tenders or chicken breast into nugget-sized pieces, and these are going to be bite-sized for whatever your family needs. You do want to work pretty fast for this because the chicken is out of the refrigerator, and that means it's at room temperature, which is right in the middle of that temperature danger zone, which is between 41 and 135. At that range, bacteria are going to be growing, and so we want to work quickly. This does go further than a chicken breast would for a general family meal, and so one breast is going to feed 2 to 3 people, so it's a good way to stretch things out. So that's a good thing to do, to kind of like make things last a little bit longer with some cheaper ingredients. You may need to remove the tendon. That's that like little white stringy part. You'll see me kind of shaving that off of there. On the tenders, that does actually stick around, so you might want to remove that from the tenders as you are cutting this up. So that's something you might want to think about if you are buying chicken tenders. If you are getting chicken breast, you are going to look out for any large tendons or connective tissue. You will know it's connective tissue because it's a little tougher, and look out for any blood spots as well and take those out, just so that that flavor doesn't get into the chicken. But something that you are not going to want to do, because what I will see a lot of times when people are doing this, is don't cut off all the fat. These are chicken tenders. We are going to be putting fat on the outside of them anyway, so don't cut off all the fat, because fat equals flavor. And so you are not going to want to trim off every little bit of white off of these. Don't get too precious with trying to get every little bit off. Also, another important thing, look at your cutting board at all times while you are cutting this. Chicken is slimy, it is a little bit gross, and your knife can slip very, very easily because of that sliminess. So you need to be looking at your cutting board at all times while you are cutting to make sure that you are not going to get hurt, and just be very careful and take your time if you're nervous. When you are finished with cutting these up, you're going to put your cutting board in the dishwasher if you have one. If you don't, you're going to sanitize it really well in the sink with some sanitizer, and then also sanitize your knife when you wash that, because this is chicken. It's potentially contaminated with salmonella. We want to make sure that we are cleaning things really well. Do not put your knives in the dishwasher, because that can dull them and can damage them. You never put knives in the dishwasher, but you don't need to sanitize your counter until after the breading step is done, because you're just going to have to do it again anyway. And because we're going straight into breading, you don't want that sanitizer to get onto anything. So now we're going to set up our breading. And so first the chicken is going to go into the flour bowl, and you're going to toss that around to coat. And you can do this with your fingers. If it bothers you, you can always wear gloves. But you want to get that completely coated in the flour and move that around. And then the second step is you're going to go into the eggs, and then you're going to go into the breadcrumbs. You always want to make sure that you spray your pan, because you're going to want to spray it with cooking spray. And then once you have finished with getting all of the chicken nuggets in the pan, you're going to spray the top of it with the cooking spray as well. So you want to spray the top of the nuggets, but don't ever use olive oil, because it has a low smoke point, and so these will literally start smoking in your oven. You can always use tongs to move the chicken to keep your hands clean, and I found that's a really good and easy way to make sure that you don't end up with the club hand that usually comes with breading things. And so I usually like to use tongs to move things around, because it just keeps things a little bit cleaner. So you just want to continue on with that process of breading everything and grease your pan, and then once you are finished, you're going to spray the top of that with oil. You're going to bake these at 350 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes until the internal temperature of them reaches 165 degrees. And it's important to understand that the temperature you set your oven to is not the internal temperature of the food itself. And so the internal temperature is really important for chicken, because that temperature of 165 is the temperature that kills salmonella. And so we definitely want to make sure that we are eliminating any salmonella in the chicken, and so we are making sure that it reaches that temperature. A lot of people don't fully understand that there's a difference between the minimum internal temperatures required and the temperature that you set the oven to. Those are two different things. The minimum internal temperature is the internal temperature that the food gets to kill bacteria. So here's the most important part. We have to dip our nuggies into something. So this is how you make your own honey mustard, and this is going to be better than any honey mustard that you can purchase. So you're going to start out with a cup of mayonnaise, and the most important thing about this is that the only accepted brand is Duke's. We only use Duke's mayonnaise. If you are in other parts of the country, that, like, I'm in the South, and so in the South we only use Duke's mayonnaise. Then you're going to add about 1/4 to 1/2 cup of honey, depending on how sweet you want your honey mustard to be. And you can adjust this once you mix it up to add a little bit more. If your honey is gotten hard like mine has, you can warm it up a little bit to get more to come out of the container. And then you're going to add about 1/4 cup of yellow or Dijon mustard. If you want honey mustard, you got yellow mustard. If you want honey Dijon, you use Dijon mustard. So yellow mustard for honey mustard, Dijon mustard for honey Dijon. So then you're just going to stir that to combine it, and then you're going to taste it to make sure that the sweetness and the mustard flavor is enough and adjust that. You can add a little bit of paprika to it, and that's going to add a little bit of spice to make it a little bit better. But that's pretty much all you have to do to make honey mustard. This recipe ends up being really good. It's one of the favorite recipes in my class, and it's also a great weeknight dinner, and it's a good way to feel like you've eaten out when you haven't. Thank you so much for watching this episode and watching Mixing with Merks. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as subscribing really helps out our channel. And we will see you next time.